let's start the session. Okay, so welcome to the Team Fest and thanks for joining my session about top 12 tips to use properly Teams with colleagues and students. First, a little bit about myself. My name is Laurent Carlier and I am a MVP team from France. I'm a former teacher and EdTech consultant, and I work today for G-Team, a Microsoft Gold partner and Microsoft in Education Global Training partner. And we provide a range of services like setup, roll-up, deployment, licensing, change management for schools and educational institutions on Office 365 education platforms and tablet device. I could not start my session without mentioning the dramatic situation we are in. Actually, there is 3 billion people around the globe under lockdown. And as you can see with the chart in my slide from UNESCO, actually there is 185 countries who decided to close their schools. It is very tough for everyone, and I begin myself with my third week of lockdown, so you know it's tough for everyone. So the question is, okay, so now what for schools? Daily ask the same question from teachers, how to ensure the learning continuity. And what could be good in that situation is the quick and high adoption of Teams around the world. Some numbers, as you can see, with a tweet by Mike Tolfsen from the Microsoft Education team. And he said that there is 775% increase of cloud services right now, and more than 44 million daily Microsoft Teams user. It is very big. And this is a really huge numbers. That's why I wanted to share some 12 tips to start off on the right foot and avoid common mistakes. I'm not going to show you in details how to deliver remote teaching, but if you are interested in that, feel free to contact me. Before that, a quick remember about Teams education features. When you create a Teams in an educational tenant, you have basically 4 sorts of Teams. The first one is class, the second one is PLC, the third one is staff, and there is another one. The main difference between them is concern the OneNote. As you can see, when you create a class, you have a OneNote education version, which have 3 spaces. The first space is content library, which is read only for students. The second space is collaboration space, which is editable by teachers and students, and you have students' portfolios. The PLC, there is no specific space. It is pretty like the business version of OneNote, and section can be edited by anyone. When you create a staff team, you have the same OneNote that the class team, with a content library, with a collaboration space, and a staff portfolio. And the last one, the other, does not include the OneNote. So let's start with the first tip. And if you have any question, feel free to ask me this question in the chat. So the first tip will concern the private group conversation. When you want to talk with a colleague on a specific subject, you can do it by private chat, and there are 2 good advice to follow. The first one is you have to name the private chat if you want to find it easier after. And if you want to have a third person, you can decide to give access or not. I will show you how I can do it. Okay. Let me see my conversation. Okay, so basically, I have a conversation with Julien and Philippe. And if you have a lot of conversation, if you want to find, an old conversation, if you do not name the conversation, then it can be very tricky. That's why when you have a conversation between 2 persons, you can name the conversation right there. with the pen. And for example, I will say, okay, it is about assessment for remote learning. Okay, and I save it. And then I have my name of the private group chat. And if I want to add a third person right there, for example, this person, the nice thing is that I have the choice to include the conversation history or the conversation history with 1 day, 2 days, etc., or to include all the conversation history. So this is good to understand that when you talk with colleague on a private chat, and this is my daily work right now with remote working and remote teaching, then I really advise you to name your private chat, because after you can find it very easier. So the things about the let me see here. The things about the students right now is that the conversation right now between all schools who are using educational tenant is what I am doing with the private group chat. I can disable it for students, and you can do it in the Microsoft Teams Admin Center. Or if you want to enable it, especially if you work with K-12 students, you can add an adult in the private group chat. It can be a teacher, or you can open for all. There is no, specific answer. It really depends on context, but yeah, it can be very sad if you disable it, because right now, students want to discuss themselves, but it can be also very tricky to track conversation, especially if there is some bad conversation. So it is a main question, and you have really to consider it right now if you're using an educational tenant. The next step will be the read receipt that you can find also in private chat. When you have a private discussion with colleague, it can be great sometimes to check if the person read or not your messages. By default, the function is on the admin, but you can still disable it. And I will show you how it looks with a screen capture. As you can see here, I have a conversation with Sarah and Juliette. And the nice thing is that I put the read receipt on, and I have those two symbols right there. And when you have the seen symbol, and when you click on the three dots on the message, then I can see that this message, the message I sent to Sarah and Juliette, was read by Juliette and Sarah. It is written there, read by two members. But if one person only read the message, then I have a second symbol right there, the symbol sent. And as you can see here, it is said that only one member read the message, and I can know that is Sarah. Sarah read the message. So it's really up to you if you want to allow this. I know that it can be very, difficult for people to let read receipt, but for me it is very good if I want to know that if the person read this message or not. So it's up to you, but it is a good advice if you want to to track, or if you want to have a really detailed following on your message in the private chat. This is on the private chat. It is not on the team chat. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. I will check there. I can see there is no question, so I will continue about the tip 3 and 4. And this is about the basic conversation. I know that when you are new to Teams, you can make these mistakes, and it's good to remember it. The first one is that you don't have to confuse about start a conversation with reply to a conversation. I will show you just after. You have to use a subject line if you want to start a new conversation. If you're not using rich text, you can press Shift plus Enter to start a new line, and I will show you this right now. And I will talk about students just after it. Let me see. I will pick up one of my team. It was right there. For example, I have a message from Armel, and she said, "Okay, the tomorrow lesson is it from 3?" And basically, when you are new to Teams and when you don't see this, you will answer right there. For example, yes. But if you put yes right there, this conversation and this conversation is not linked. So be aware of this. When you have a question right there, then you can just click on the answer and then say yes. And then this is the same conversation. It is very important to do this. So the first one is that you have this one. So, and if you want to add another topic, for example, a topic about the remote learning hours, then I advise you to enable the rich text right there, and the subject line is there, and I can write question. A question about remote learning hours, and then after I can write my question right there, and when I send it, you know, I have the subject line right there, and it's very easy to, you know, to find the question, especially if you have a long discussion feed like me, then you can find a question like this. So you should really use the subject line. And the last trick for the newbie in Teams is that when you write a message right there, if you want to go to put another line below, then you will press, you know, the button. But if you push this button, it will enter the button, you know. So basically, to avoid this, you have to write your word, and you click Shift and Enter, and I will show you. There. Hello, and Shift and Enter, and you see, then I have my second line. If I do not this, if I push only Enter, then it will send the message, you know. So this is, it is important to know, because when you discover Teams, it can be very tricky if you don't manage that kind of function. And I will go back to my question about students, especially when you work with students in Teams. I'm not a big fan of GIF. I'm not a big fan of stickers, and I'm not a big fan of meme. Obviously, I can allow this in class Teams, and it is by default. But you can manage it in Admin Center, or if one teacher wants to manage it by himself in his class, then he can do it with the 3 dots. For example, I have my class team right there, and when I click on the 3 dots and I go on the Teams option right there, Teams option, and then I can find the function here, and I can disable it for the stickers and for the meme. So yeah, it's up to you if you want to save it, but if you enable it, you have to really be careful, because students can be very you know, excited about this function, and then they will use it massively, and when they use it massively, then your feed discussion will be, very hard to read. So basically, when you work on a class team, I will strongly advise you to disable it. Any question in go back there? No question. Okay, then I will continue. So tips number 5 and 6. It's always about conversation, but this time about mentioning. And I have 3 advice to give you. The first is when you mention someone, an individual person, you can press backspace to keep only name. It is good if you do not want to have all the name of the person. I will show you this just after. You can mention channels if you create semantic channels with specific person. And you can also create and mention tags if you use a big team with teacher or a big team with many classes. And I will show you how to do this. Let me see, I will go back there. The first is when I just want to keep the last name or the first name of the person. For example, if I want to talk with this person, basically I have those 2. And if I just want to keep our mail, I will just go backspace right there, and it works, and our mail will be mentioned. So it is good if you want to, just to have some a more friendly conversation. And it is also good if you invite some guest people right there in your team. And if you do not want those people will be mentioned as a guest, then you can erase it right there. And the channel mention and the tag mention, I will show you with another another team. This is a PLC team, a team shared by teachers, and those teachers create teams to talk about assessment, remote teaching, and schedule, program, curriculum. And basically, when you want to mention all the people interested in, for example, remote teaching, you don't want to mention all the teams because maybe in this team some teachers are interested in assessment and other in remote teaching and other in schedule. And if you mention everybody, then the conversation will be very difficult to track. So I advise you to mention the channel. And you can do this with Artmark and the channel. And if I choose this, then the people in this channel will be mentioned about my question. For example, question right there. And if you have a team with different people who are working in different channels, but could be interested in the cross-channel conversation, then you can use tags, and I will show you the nice things about this. I will show you just one thing before. For example, here, this is me, and this is the teachers. And for example, these teachers is French language teachers, and this teachers is an English language teachers. And I want to create a tag about language because there is some conversation that could interested the French language teacher and the English language teachers. So basically how I do this, I just click on the 3 dots on the team and select the create a tag, and then I will name it language teaching, and then we'll find the person concerned about this. That was Julien and Philippe, and just create it. Okay, so it is done. And when you go back on your team, you know, there is the tag name appear right there. It's enseignement long. So if I want to mention those people, for example, in general channel, but concerning the language parts, and then I will go heart mark and then find my tag right there and put my question. Then Julien and Philippe will be mentioned about this. So this is another good trick if you want to, you know, to master the mention. And it works obviously in educational tenant and business tenant. Next tip about file management in team. And yes, you can copy files from your OneDrive to Teams, and it's important to master it. And yes, for newbies, when you are an educator, for newbies, you have automatic folder, which is read-only for your students, and you can find it on the general channel. I will show you this right there. And I see that there is a, okay. I checked the question just right after. So, okay. So copy files from OneDrive to your Teams. It is very simple to do it. You select the files right there, and then your OneDrive. And when you go back, when you have the OneDrive open, it will take just a little time. For example, my presentation right there, and just select it, and then the three dots right there. And I will not choose move, because if I choose move, then they will move it from my OneDrive, and I will not have it anymore on my OneDrive. So I can choose the copy. And when I select copy, I can also select which teams I want to send it. So for example, I will select a class there, and I have all my channels, the general channel and the thematic channels I created. And then I select, for example, this one, and then copy. And when I copy it, then it will copy the file in this Teams, and there will be no effect on the original version. So if you have some files that you want to keep the original version in your OneDrive, then it is a good way to to copy your files from your OneDrive to Teams. And the class Teams and the read-only folder, but it is there's one thing that I have to say about it. But first, I will show you where this folder is, and obviously this is only for educational tenant, and you don't have it if you are in a business tenant. When you create a class Teams, you have in a default general channel on the files section, you have this folder. This is automatically created, and it is called class materials. And as you can see, this folder is only read only for students, editable for teachers, but read only for students. So if you do not want to have some files management rights complicated by doing this by SharePoint interface, then you can you have this one, but this one is only in a general files in a files file space. But my way to to see it is that you don't have to, if you have some resources for students, for example, and if you want these resources to be read only, then you must, and you must, the word is must, you must use the OneNote Education version. If you do not use the OneNote Education version, then it is a great loss. It is really a great loss because, as I said at the beginning of my session, when you have the OneNote Education version, you have three space: the content library, the collaboration space, and the individual portfolios of students. And if you want to put read-only resources for students, then you should put it on the content library. And all the resources you put on the content library, for example, like this, it is by default read only by students. So if you have some question about file management, just think before inserting your resources into OneNote and not in a file section. I know it is difficult for some educators who want to copy the architecture of folders they have in their hard disk, but it is not the way it has to be. You have to first think about OneNote, especially if you are in a class teams, and then you put all the resources in your OneNote. And the file section, I do not use a lot about file section. I use only file section if I create some thematic channel. But if it is a resources for lessons, then you must insert it in the OneNote. Let's continue with the tips number 8 and 9, the class meeting in Teams. And this is the question number 1 right now. It is really tricky because you can have some problems, and I would like to cover 3 things about this. The first thing is that when you want to do some remote learning meeting with your class, you have to set up the meeting in the calendar right there and create a new meeting, and it will be for example, this one, and then you don't have to add all your students right there, but you have to mention a channel right there, and this channel can be, for example, in a team class. It is good to create a channels with that could be called meeting. And in these channels called meetings, you will find all your meeting invitation. So basically you do like this. And the tricky part is that if you send the invitation like this, students will be considered as presenter. So some students will have the possibility to mute students or mute teachers. That's why to prevent this, you really have to consider one important thing is that when you create a meeting, you create it in calendar, and just after it, you open it, and you have right there the meeting option. And when you click on this, basically it will open a new window. Let me see if I can show you right there. This window right there. The meeting option, and you have two things that you can activate. The first one is the lobby, and this is another tricky part, and I will cover it just right after. But if you want your students to be only attendee, so they will not have the possibility to mute other students, and you will have the possibility to mute them, then there you have to check the only me. Who can present only me? This is right now, this is the things that you have to do it really, because it can be very tricky if you do not do this. So send invitation in specific channel, set who can present, and let all students in attendees, and then after you can record the meeting and create a stream channel inside your Teams if you want it. But for the class meetings, there is a big warnings, and as I said that the lobby right now, this is a huge demand from educators, and there is some user voice. I can show you. I think I had it somewhere. No, I do not have it. You will see it with my presentation. And the demand is that when you have the lobby, you don't have the option no one. And if you have the option of no one, that it will be very good, because you can really, track students. If you want to gather all students before starting your meeting, you must have this option. And why you must have this option? Because right now the next difficult thing for educators is that when you create a meeting for your class, then this meeting will stay on the calendar of students. That means that students can rejoin the meeting, the 2 days before meeting, they will be able to rejoin it and have some conversation, some private conversation. And that's why from now there is no nice solution for this, but the recommendation I saw from all educators in the world is that you have to send the meeting invitation 1 hour before, and after the meeting you have to delete the invitation. And once you delete the invitation, then students will not be able to rejoin the meeting. So you have to be very careful. If you have some educators, customers, or if you work with educators, you should really say to them that they have to pay attention to that kind of problems. I know Microsoft is currently working on this one, but I don't know when it will be available for all tenants in the world. Let's continue. Tips number 10 and 11. Don't get lost. And if you want to organize your workplace when you are using a lot of teams, you will probably going to run into some information access problems. You have a lot of teams, you have a lot of conversation, you have a lot of channels. And to organize your workplace, there is 3 things you can do it. First, you can drag and drop your teams. You can pin a channel, and you can bookmark a conversation. And I will show it right there. For example, my team. If I have a lot of teams like this, I can drag and drop the teams. For example, this team is important, so I can just drag it and drop in a place where I want the teams to be. If I have another teams that I don't use anymore, then I can hide it. right there, hide it, and then I will not have it on the list, and it will appear on the bottom with hidden teams. And if I have a daily conversation in a channel, for example, with my channel with teachers teams, I can favorite it to have it on the top right there. And how I do this, basically, it's very simple. You click on the three dots right there, and you have the option pin, and you pin the right there, pin, and you can find it here. And if you have a conversation that you want to keep because there was some good information in this conversation, you can save the conversation. Let me see. For example, an announcement right there. You click on the three dots on the conversation, and then you have the option right there, bookmark the post, bookmark the message. So if I do it, then I can find after all my bookmark messages right there. Bookmarking. So if I click right there, then I will have all my bookmark message right there. So it is another way to organize your workplace, and you should really do this if you are a heavy user of Teams. Last one, as I see that time is running on. Donc tip number 12, insert into Teams third-party tools. As Microsoft Teams Education is growing up, a lot of major edtech tools start to be connected with Teams, and they have the Share to Teams button that allow to share directly contents into Teams. And there is some good edtech tools like Kahoot, like Genially, Worklet, Bunsy, etc., etc. So if when educators are using those tools, then they can connect those tools into Teams. And the biggest tools that is really used right now by all educators in the world is Flipgrid. And the nice thing is that Flipgrid is free for teachers, and you can connect it directly with your Office 365 account. And you can also add it directly into a channel with the plus button. Here, when I click on the plus, then I will find Flipgrid on the list somewhere. Or I will check right there. Flipgrid right there. And Flipgrid is a video discussion platform, and I will show you how it looks right there. So basically you set some task. For example, this task was for the day one, introduce yourself. And then students connect to these tools with a code. You can see the code right there. And then the nice thing is that after, teachers can gather all individual video recording from students. So this is nice if you want to have a daily tracking task, video production tracking task for students. Then you can set up it very nicely. And if you want to see how it looks, it is very simple. When you are connected into your Flipgrid account, then this is the administration interface. Then you can add a new grid. And for example, if I choose the conference grid, I had it before. I can add a new topic, and I push the new topic, for example, your best teams track. Then, for example, give me your best teams track, and then I can add some option right there. But from now, I do not need this option. I can choose more option. I can set up if I want students reply, or if I want to give feedback on the video production, I can do it right there. And I can also set up the length, the recording time. I can go up to 10 minutes. And once I already is done, I just click on the create topic right there. And then I share it with my students. And as you can see, there is some share to Teams, share to Microsoft Teams, but I can also add the application into Teams. So this is a great tool if you want to have it. It could be also a great tool for the organizer of Team Fest. If you are here, Chris, or if you are here, Adam, you should really use this one to have a feedback, a video feedback for all your participants. It could be great if all of the participants for this conversation could record a video and tell you their opinion and about the session or about the events. So this is the end of my presentation. I will just give you another slide where this one where you can rate my session. There is a QR code right there and a link, and please rate my session. And there is also some great session coming on Team Fest. So yeah, please attend those sessions. It is a great event. I will let the QR code if you want to check. If you want to contact me, I will put on the chat my mail and Twitter account. I do right there. Okay. And I will see if there is any question. Thanks, Jindy, for your message. No question? Okay. Or if you have another advice, to share with participants, you can write it in a chat if you want to. Please don't be shy. Write your comments. Okay, a question from Jendi, looking at option for the lower grades. What kind of option? Is it about Teams? Okay, if they are not using Teams very easily, I will strongly recommend to set up a OneNote, the OneNote Education I show you. And the good thing with OneNote is that it can be very good for parents if they want to teach at home and want to have the teachers' resources, then you should really consider this option. So first, set up in your tenant a OneNote Education and insert all your students right there. And then after you can explain with the tutorials how to access to this OneNote for parents. And parents will connect to this OneNote. And then the good thing is that if teachers write every day on this OneNote, they will have a daily track of work or task to do. And OneNote, you can find OneNote for free with application in App Stores, Google Play, and you can also download it from free for the desktop version. And you have two versions for OneNote. You have the 2016 version, and you have the application version. Basically, I use the old one, but if you want to use the application version from Windows 10, then it can be good also. And Andrew asked for the copy of the slide. Yeah, maybe the organizer will send you a link after the event where you will see the materials. I see Vesa is here. If Vesa can write about it, could be great. So if you have no more question, thank you for your participation and feel free to contact me if you have any question about the Teams education version or the remote teaching. Thank you.